The story I'm about to tell is very difficult for me to talk about, but it is very real and very important for me to tell others. While I'm ashamed of what I let happen to me, it is an important story for others to hear, just so it doesn't happen to anyone else. Let me start out by saying I was a victim of a romance scam. On the screen behind me is a copy of the profile and information that my female scammer used. I will leave it on the screen during my presentation so it burns into everyone's memory. So let me start from the beginning. I live in Australia. After my divorce, I finally decided to give online dating a try. Why not? Well, big mistake. At first I thought, how hard could this online dating be? Also, how much trouble could I get in by doing it? Well, let's just say, starting and finding a dating site is the easy part. It's the rest of the events in between that can become a real nightmare. The first and only site I joined was the Match.com for Australia. I did my profile and within a day I had a reply from a woman calling herself Elizabeth Collins. I thought to myself, wow, this is easy. At first Elizabeth and I were just talking. We talked about anything and everything. But as time went along, we got closer to each other. She made me feel like a teenager again and I was feeling real happy. So I just went with it. As the months went by, I fell in love with her. Mind you, we still have not met face to face. She had told me that she was in Malaysia buying gold and jewelry and that the total value of these goods was around 2.5 million in Australian dollars. She went on to say that she needed some money to get it out of Malaysia. The amount she needed to get the goods out of Australia was $4,000. I didn't think that was too much, so I sent her the money. After sending the money, she called and said she would be on her way to Australia. I was very happy. Over the next couple days she never made it back to Australia or even called me. I was getting a little worried, but she finally called and told me she needed some more money. This time it was $2,000 for legal costs. So like an idiot, I sent her more money. She called again and of course, she needed more money. This time, it was $4,000. So I went ahead and sent the money by MoneyGram. All transactions that I did with her were by MoneyGram. After I sent the last MoneyGram, I got a message saying that she had been in a car accident while on the way to the airport. I couldn't believe it. I hope she dies, I screamed. Then someone sent me an email. In the email he wrote that he was the doctor that had treated her for the accident. He wrote that she was in a bad way. Again, I said I don't care. I hope she dies. A couple days later, the supposed doctor rang me again and told me she had woken up. She had made a slow recovery. Elizabeth rang me a few times on the phone and spoke with me. Somehow she convinced me that everything that had happened was true. A few weeks later, she told me that she was trying to board a plane with the goods and that they were taken by customs. She now had to show the courts that she really owned the goods. Of course this would cost money. This time it wasn't some paltry amount, it was a whopping $40,000. Like a real fool, I sent that to her as well. She called to tell me that she had given the goods to a shipping and security company. She had to have security involved because some people were after her goods. I am ashamed to say that I fell for it again. She needed another $20,000 as a deposit for the shipping and security company. So foolishly I transferred $20,000 to a bank account she gave me. I still have all the banking details she had ever given me. By this time I had paid her approximately $150,000. After this, I made one more payment to the shipping and security company for $50,000. She told me once that this was paid, she would come home. Well, believe it or not, I trusted her. Not surprisingly, she called and requested more. She said that the shipping and security company needed another $20,000 to ship the goods to Australia. I said I'm not sending any more money. I thought that I had a better idea. Instead of sending the money, I would bring it over to Malaysia. She said this would work and she agreed to meet me there. So I booked a flight and headed out. When I got there, she was not there to greet me. Instead, I got a message telling me she would meet me at Melbourne airport when I got back. She did, however, book me a room. She told me that she wanted me to meet the people from the shipping and security company. About 6 p.m. that evening, I got a phone call from the so-called shipping and security company. They told me that someone was coming over to meet me. A woman came over to my hotel that night. This woman said she wanted me to give her the $20,000 I had brought with me. I told her no and that I wanted to see the goods. The lady then made a phone call to her so-called boss. She said someone will pick me up at 9 a.m. the next morning. When no one came by in the morning, I rang the shipping and security company. I asked him what was going on. They told me that they are busy and someone would pick me up at 1 p.m. in the afternoon. A driver arrived at my hotel and drove me out to an industrial area of Malaysia. This area had shipping containers all over the place. We kept driving and stopped in front of a big high-rise building. The lady who had met me at the hotel was waiting for me. She took me into the elevator where the offices were supposedly located. Thinking about this later, when I was in the elevator, I'd noticed that there was a curtain around where the floor numbers were displayed. She actually had to move the curtain aside to push a button for the company floor. So I never did see what floor the offices were on. Once on the floor, I was taken to a room. In this room there was some coffee and cake. On the floor was a box which they told me held the gold jewelry and US currency. They showed me everything that was in the box. I asked them, how do I know if any of this is real? This is when they gave me $200 and said I could go to any cash exchange and exchange it. This will prove it's real. So I was driven to a cash exchange and was able to exchange it without any issues. Because the money turned out to be real, I thought everything was good. I handed over the $20,000 and gave them my business address for the goods to be shipped to. I was given a receipt for the $20,000. When everything was done, I was taken back in the elevator. Again, I noticed that the curtain in the elevator was moved back to the side so I couldn't see the floor display. The driver was waiting for me and took me back to the hotel. After my flight back to Melbourne, it was at the airport where the real fun started. While there, I had drug dogs put on me and my luggage. Yes, drug dogs. Nothing was found. But they did take my bags and go through them. They found the paperwork I was given in Malaysia. They took my phone and went through it. They were looking at all my emails and calls relevant to my travels to Malaysia. By now, it seemed like everyone was just looking at me with sorry faces. This really upset me. It was at this point where I just lost it. I asked who wants to be the first to come outside so I can punch their head in. I was so mad, I wanted to take them all on. This was a really bad idea. One of the border security guards pulled me aside and said we need to have a talk. The guard took me outside so that I could have a smoke. He talked to me for a while, which I appreciated. He told me flat out that he knew that there was a very high probability I had been scammed. He went on to tell me that airport personnel had seen this scenario before. Unfortunately, it had happened many times and many people had been duped. This information hit me like a ton of bricks. I asked the guard to take me to the Southern Cross station so I could jump under a train. He eventually calmed me down. He phoned my oldest daughter and told her what had happened to me. I was too embarrassed to talk with her. After leaving the airport, I stayed in a backpacker's hostel for a couple days before I went home to face the music. After I told my family the whole story, they wanted nothing to do with me. I couldn't blame them. I just kept asking myself, why did I let this happen? After a few weeks, things started to get a little bit better. Not surprisingly, there never was a sign of the infamous Elizabeth Collins in Australia. I did eventually get an email from the shipping and security company saying customs had stopped the goods. Now we needed to pay another $130,000 to get the goods released. I did not respond. Over the next couple of weeks, I continued to be contacted by them. Finally, they told me that I didn't need to pay the full $130,000. They would go ahead and release the goods for a mere $40,000. The last call I had with them, I was told I would only have to pay $20,000 to get the goods released. I politely declined. Elizabeth Collins did finally phone to tell me that she could not meet me back in Melbourne. She said that she had been detained in Singapore. She said she actually had a company there. Her manager for the company had run away with all the money. Because of this, she was being held responsible for the money by the government. According to her, she was now under house arrest in Singapore. When we first started talking to each other, she had told me she wanted to start up her own fashion label. This is why she was in Malaysia buying the gold jewelry and other goods. Well, now she was telling me that she had already had a company there. I finally decided that there was no way she would be getting any more money out of me. I know that many of you are probably thinking I should have cut her off many dollars ago. But when you're in the middle of something you think is real love, you lose all common sense. You do some really dumb things. On the screen, you can see a copy of the documents the supposed shipping company had sent me for the $130,000. I know it is fake, because I've had it checked out by the Malaysian embassy. They told me no such documents exist. I also had her passport checked out, and it is fake. I have kept everything she ever sent me. Well, this concludes my story of a very stupid man. Please stay safe out there. Thank you for listening.